The Nightmare Before Christmas is an undisputed holiday classic and a cultural icon that you couldn't ignore even if you tried. It's the perfect melding of Henry Selick's always fantastic stop-motion creativity and Tim Burton's gothic character design, and partially because its images everywhere around Halloween, it's often the first movie you think about during this season. And when you've got a massively popular animated film, of course you'll get some game spin-offs. Outside of collaborations in stuff like Rocket League and Fortnite and its appearances in Kingdom Hearts, there are two Nightmare Before Christmas video games. The sequel, Oogie's Revenge, and the prequel, The Pumpkin King, both released on October 10th, 2005, at least in the US. With a full universe of holidays to explore and lore that's been expanded upon in books and comics since the movie's release, a handful of new stories was a logical step for a video game adaptation. So to celebrate this scary season, let's see what the denizens of Halloween Town have been up to in the digital realm. Up first is Oogie's Revenge, published by Capcom in Japan and Europe, and by Buena Vista Games, aka Disney Interactive, in North America for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. It was developed by Tosei Software, whose body of work is immense at over 1,000 games, but you might know them specifically for the Game & Watch Gallery series and the legendary Starfy, as well as, so many other things. It's insane. The story starts a year after the movie ended, with the monsters and ghosts having just completed another Halloween, and, big shock, Jack Skellington's grown bored with the whole thing and leaves town in search of ways to make it better. Now, if you're hoping that he'll go through the same character arc but co-opt a different holiday, you'd be wrong, so Jack's adventures in Talk Like a Pirate Day town will come some other time. Wait a minute. Instead, he comes back from wherever he went to find that Halloween Town is in shambles, invaded by evil spirits under the leadership of Oogie Boogie, who's evidently been revived. You're not exactly sure what the hell happened at first, but whatever it is, I'm gonna assume it was the mayor's fault. I never trusted that guy. This is where we get a taste for the gameplay, and, well, it's Devil May Cry. Oogie's Revenge takes the copy whatever's popular approach that so many licensed titles were guilty of, and hey, action hack and slash games were all the rage in the 6th generation, so I totally get it. Jack's got a new toy in the form of the Soul Robber, a little slimy guy attached to his arm that lets him strike foes with a couple of melee attacks. You can whip to your heart's content, but the Soul Robber can also grab and slam these punks into the ground, throw them into walls or other enemies, or even do a superpowered spin move if you charge it up. It's not super deep, attacks are kinda slow, and your combo potential is fairly limited, but it works well enough, and grappling your foes adds a fun dimension to the whole affair. But the thing is, this is more or less what you're equipped with for the full game as far as combat. Jack's Soul Robber form can be upgraded for additional power and extended combos, although the move list is still pretty bare bones, no pun intended. You do get 2 additional forms, but I found them pretty lacking. I barely used the Pumpkin King form outside of when it was necessary. It looks cool, but its fiery AoE attacks don't appeal to my playstyle. Sure, they're good if you're surrounded, but dodging felt more satisfying, and this runs out of resources too quickly. And Santa Jack is kinda situational. Jack will pull out presents that can stun, poison, or freeze enemies, but more often than not, setting them up is too awkward, and unless you're trying to go for S ranks or reduce enemy levels, it's not worth the hassle. Jack can taunt enemies to intimidate them, just like Devil May Cry, upgrading their attack and defense while giving you a higher exclamation point tally, which, really, is only helpful for high scores. And I care about them about as much as Jack does.
Oh no.
But yeah, you get a ranking for each chapter, as you'd expect from a Skelly May Cry game. If you really get into the gameplay, going for all S ranks probably isn't too tough, although I haven't done it myself. At the very least, you can unlock figures of your favorite characters with every A-ranked mission and view them at Jack's house, which I definitely remembered to get footage of. Yeah. Anyway, it turns out that the citizens of Halloween Town tried to make Jack happy by filling this place with scares, and that apparently meant booby-trapping the entire town. Which, yeah, putting traps in your home would probably frighten the hell out of me. But those trickster kids Lock, Shock, and Barrel took advantage of Jack's absence to bring Oogie's shadow back to life, and we gotta take him down with the power of music. Well, first the power of whipping Oogie's sack a bunch of times, and then the power of music. This game's got plenty of boss fights, and the big ones aren't just a matter of smacking your target to hell and back, although that is still a large component. But when you collect enough musical notes, it suddenly turns into a rhythm game. This came out before the first Guitar Hero, which signaled a huge rise and then fall of rhythm games in the West, so at least back then, this was still kind of a neat idea. And it is a nice way to tie into the musical element of the film, even if the actual mechanic feels fairly tacked on. Plus, what Nightmare Before Christmas fan wouldn't want to jam with the songs from the film's soundtrack, but not really? It has all the tunes you remember, but with new lyrics that reflect the game's story. So you don't get Making Christmas, you get Take Our Town Back.
Take our town back, take our town back, we can win.
They don't exactly match the quality of Danny Elfman's original songs, unfortunately. The only song brought over unchanged is This Is Halloween, but I got sick of that one because it plays in almost every non-boss encounter. Though I really like the adaptation of Sally's song into a duet between her and Jack, which is oddly fitting for a boss theme, and Oogie's song, my favorite, is more or less intact even with the new lyrics. Although special shoutouts to What's This, which became the absolute banger, Oh No.
Oh no, oh no, there's trouble everywhere. Oh no, there's smoke clouds in the air. Oh no, I can't believe my eyes, I have to help them hurry. Jack, they wouldn't dare. Oh no!
So Jack's first mission is to head to the graveyard, and here's where the first major issue rears its head. There's a lot of walking back and forth. And you have to expect that to some degree, but the chapters are designed with a lot of boomeranging between two spots, and this is a perfect example. You walk around the first area to reach the hanging tree, who asks you to find his missing skeletons, and you need Zero's help to track them. Where is Zero hiding? Back at the start of the area, so you gotta hustle back. I say hustle, but if there's anything this bag of bones doesn't know the meaning of, it's speed. This lanky-ass skeleton has a big stride, but he certainly ain't fast, which is great when the levels force you to tread the same ground over and over again. The platforming is thankfully pretty light, with only some grappling hooks to get any kind of air, yet traversal is still a pain because Bone Daddy here can't pick up the pace. I like that this is a full world to explore rather than just a series of stages, but that doesn't matter when actually getting around takes longer than it should. It's especially noticeable when you need to head back to Town Square to refill your health containers or buy an upgrade from the Witch's Shop, which I hear is the best bargain in town.
Witch's Shop, the best bargain in town!
They've got helpful trinkets and upgrades for Jack in his various forms, and if you thought Jack sounded bored earlier, wait until you hear this lovely lady.
You'll always be our hero, Jack.
Yes, Jack, you're our favorite guy in the whole wide world. Care to buy a shirt from Hot Topic? Okay, but on the whole, the voice acting isn't that bad. Many actors from the film return, like the late Glenn Shaddix and Ken Page, and even Chris Sarandon came back like he did for Kingdom Hearts. He also took on Jack's singing this time, as Danny Elfman didn't return, and although he's not a trained singer, he does alright. Kath Soucie once again takes over for Catherine O'Hara, and is fine enough, even though every time I hear her shock voice, all I can hear is Lil from Rugrats.
I'm sorry, Jack. I was only playing a trick.
Speaking of Shock and her cohorts Lock and Barrel, they love causing Jack trouble in the early parts of the game. You'll fight all three of them twice on their own as Jack works to undo their mischief and handiwork, which means you get to hear the new version of Kidnap the Sandy Claus a lot.
Hail to Mr. Oogie, Jack will never win. When you find our booby traps, they will do you in.
Look, I like this song when you hear it the one time in the movie, but this altered version gets annoying far quicker than the other songs, and it sucks hearing it every time you fight these little buggers. Plus, Hail to Mr. Oogie? Come on, Kick Back the Skellington was right there. Most of your initial objectives are just undoing all the chaos that Oogie Boogie and his minions have done. You're not going on the offensive to take the Bugman down until much later. That includes saving Sally from captivity and fighting Dr. Finkelstein, whom Jack left in charge when he left in the beginning, further reinforcing the idea that the mayor does Jack Shittington in Halloween Town. Guess he really can't make decisions by himself. Somewhere along the line, Dr. Finkelstein's brain was replaced by Oogie to make him evil, which is why the citizens apparently thought booby-trapping the town was a good idea. Fighting the Doctor isn't too hard though, since his only defenses are some pretty slow guns and saw blades. Honestly, climbing up the Doctor's tower is more irritating because it's a big spiral ramp with boulders in the way that, you guessed it, Jack ascends at snail's speed, with extra jittery movement thanks to the constantly shifting fixed camera. Oh, and here's a fun fact. There are hidden rooms throughout Halloween Town that force you into a large enemy rush, usually with a nice reward if you beat it, like a golden pumpkin to extend your health bar or a crystal skull to summon aliens. Sorry, I mean create another health bottle, not the other thing. We don't talk about that. One of those hidden rooms is in the climb up the Doctor's Tower, and if you die there, you gotta climb up the tower all over again. That aside, those hidden rooms are usually worth it, especially because items in the shop can be ludicrously expensive unless you replay the chapters or grind money. It encourages exploration rather than buying your way through the upgrades, and I applaud that design. Not necessarily the execution, but I can see how players might feel compelled to find all the secrets. It's a shame the combat doesn't ever evolve beyond the basics, because that would keep things from getting too stale by the end. This game isn't too long, comfortably under 10 hours if you're not going for extras, but by the end, it drags its feet pretty hard. The action isn't fast or involved enough to stay mechanically interesting through the full playthrough, even if moment to moment, Oogie's Revenge feels alright. And outside of combat, those little annoyances start to pile up. There's one chapter where you need to help the clown, whose unicycle has been outfitted with an out-of-control engine. You've got to stop him somehow, but the soul robber doesn't do anything, and you think, oh wait, Santa Jack has a present that stuns enemies, maybe this'll work. And it does, but then it doesn't. The Nearby Witch tells you that to stop the clown, you need to find a tool, which is probably the most unhelpful advice I have ever received in a video game. The only way it could be worse is if she said, to win, you have to do the correct thing. Well, the Doctor has the tool we need, so you know what that means? Climbing the tower again, yippee. This is also the point where you can take on an optional mission to help Igor defeat a giant spider, which would be cool if this boss wasn't just copied and pasted from earlier. And this time you can't even trounce the spider with your sick dance moves. Oh, and this spider is outside of the Doctor's home while the quest giver Igor is at the top, so when you're done, whatever, you've got a nondescript tool, so you help out the clown and head into the residential area. This is one of the larger places with winding streets and a whole underground section, which you need to go over with a fine-toothed comb to find the 4 missing vampire brothers. All fine and good, except that this is where the game's lighting gets on my nerves. Now I know I played this on a modern setup and I should have played on a CRT monitor for a better experience, I get it. That wouldn't fix the issues with the dark environments that are baked into the foundation of Nightmare Before Christmas. The movie is brimming with not only shadows, but dull, muted colors that blend into each other to create a sea of browns and grays. It looks great on film, but on the PlayStation 2? Not so much. And don't get me wrong, they brought the visual aesthetic of the film over perfectly, but that visual aesthetic, by design, makes the environments too murky when you're trying to play through the levels. It's hard to soak in the atmosphere when you're struggling to find a pathway that's obscured by the incessant shades of black. But with the Vampire Brothers rescued, we can head to the Mayor's Mansion, which is yet another vertical scaling level. It's got all the problems with the Doctor's Tower, but with enemies and several places to fall down, so it is infinitely worse, and I am convinced that the mayor built this hellscraper with the Halloween Town tax funds, so I am now doubly mad at him. Stay locked in your cage, jerk.
What?
At the top, there's one final fight against Lock, Shock, and Barrel before you get transported to Oogie Boogie's Hell Dimension or whatever, which would be a neat place to explore if the camera gave you a decent view so you could avoid these traps easier. This is where Oogie reveals himself and his plan. He's kidnapped all the holiday leaders in Jack's absence and crowned himself the so-called King of the 7 Holidays.
The leader of every holiday is right where he should be. And you're looking at him.
Oogie's plan is a little weird since it relies on Jack being away for a while, and given everything he went through, you'd think Jack would have some contingency plan if he'd be away for months. But Jack never was the brightest pumpkin in the patch, and I guess when you see Oogie's bugs incinerated right in front of you, it'd be safe to assume he wouldn't come back. The worst part of this story, though, is that it's such wasted potential. Oogie's stolen all the holiday doors, and you've got to recover them, but if you think that means you get to see what's behind all of those other doors, nope. You don't even rescue the kidnapped leaders, the mayor just does that off screen, which, yeah, okay, that's one point in his favor, but I'm not voting for him. Instead, Jack fumbles around the hinterlands and gets lost in the forest because, you know, God forbid we get to explore a forest level that wasn't confusing. To its credit, this place looks really cool, both the regular browns and tans of the woods and its corrupted counterpart where the sounds echo and white streaks take over the place. It's also a bitch to navigate with twisting paths that all look the same. You put the holiday doors back in their place, and Jack heads to Christmas Town for the final showdown. Sing it again, Jack.
Oh no!
After saving the Sandy Claus from these incredibly slow-moving trains, it's time to fight the big Oogie Boogie, and I do mean big. I guess that's a tradition for Oogie boss fights, huh? This is one of those encounters that lets you take advantage of the environment, since you can flame up these gas generators to burn Oogie's health away, although you've only got limited firepower, so in the end, you'll just resort to tickling his feet until he trips. Not a bad final fight, although his second phase is the worst rhythm game section because the visual effects on the notes make them incredibly hard to read at high speeds, and if you fail this part, you gotta play footsie with Oogie once again. The day is saved, Sandy Claus heads off to do his Christmas rounds, and Jack has finally absolutely definitely learned his lesson. Stay tuned for Oogie's Super Revenge, where Jack Skellington learns the true meaning of Independence Day with Uncle Sam. Oogie's Revenge isn't in any way, shape, or form surprising, and, well, that's about what I expected from a licensed game of this caliber. What it lacks in innovation, it does deliver in the same charms as the source material up to a point, but then the monotonous gameplay and odd design quirks hold it back from being something I'd really recommend. Die-hard Nightmare fans would probably eat this up, but I'd be hard-pressed to go back and find everything that I missed. If nothing else, it's a decent enough introduction to the Devil May Cry formula if you really don't want to, just play Devil May Cry. But let's say you don't want a PS2 Nightmare Before Christmas sequel that apes Devil May Cry, and instead want a GBA Nightmare Before Christmas prequel that apes Castlevania. Well, you're in luck. The Nightmare Before Christmas The Pumpkin King was also developed by Tosei and published by D3 in Japan, with Buena Vista publishing it elsewhere. This one takes place the year before the movie, giving us an origin story for Oogie Boogie and why he and Jack don't like each other. According to the manual, Oogie was the leader of a holiday called Bug Day, and while I'm sure some of you would love celebrating little bug boys, it was understandably unpopular and he's grown resentful of Jack Skellington's success. That's why his army of bugs has taken over, forcing Jack to confront him for the last time, but also the first time. I want to comment on the sprites before anything else, because to me, this game looks great. The characters transfer over to 2D very well, and the animations are nice and bouncy. I especially love the animation of Jack melting. It looks so goopy, and actually unnerved me a bit when I first saw it. Another favorite is this sprite of Jack when you load into the game, just coming in like, hey, who are you on the other side of this screen? And hot damn, look at these backgrounds. The psychedelic colors, the moving elements, it's actually super stunning. I suppose it doesn't quite look like the movie, but I appreciate that each area looks so distinct from each other, and besides, all the color contrast made it easier to play on an original Game Boy Advance. Not that I actually did that. I can't give the music the same compliments, unfortunately. This soundtrack also recycles melodies from the film, and while it isn't terrible or anything, most of the loops are too short and the GBA sound quality doesn't do the tunes any favors. Take a listen to its version of This Is Halloween and see for yourself. Anyway, as I alluded to, The Pumpkin King is a Metroidvania with all the trappings you expect from the genre. Several areas with interconnected rooms, upgrades to access more places, rooms for saving and regenerating health, it's all here. By the way, you use an electric chair to heal, which is not only fitting, but also hilarious. Just as hilarious as the sound that plays when you pick up a fishbone for a quick heal. The Metroidvania formula was still fresh at this point, so as with Oogie's Revenge, the gameplay style makes total sense. And as with that one, this is a heavily simplified version that strips out a bit of depth since it is clearly geared toward a family-oriented audience and thus needed broader appeal. For example, you've got signs that point you where to go, so the mystery of exploring places you haven't touched yet is somewhat diminished. And partially because of the handheld nature, the level construction is fairly linear. Yes, basically every Metroidvania is technically linear as well, but I'm talking about how each area is laid out. There are no connecting shafts or hallways that lead to a bunch of different places. Instead, it's as if they took a ton of point A to point B platforming levels and stitched them together. This just doesn't feel like a natural world, and sometimes you're straight up taking an arbitrary shortcut directly from one place to another, which is neat for backtracking, but takes away from the concept of Halloween Town as a whole, you know? And I say you take these shortcuts, but technically it's Zero guiding the way, and that's super adorable. These are simple on-rail sections, not really much to talk about, but I mean, Just look at him go. Zero is also there to warn you about nearby secrets like the good boy he is, including health bar upgrades and optional items that exist as a meaningless set of collectibles. Plus, they're presented with no context unless you open up the menu, so not exactly the best gifts even with their nice presentation. Thanks anyway, Zero. Another part of the linearity problem is that your movement upgrades are kinda lacking. There's the gumshoes that let you scale specific walls very slowly, buttons that spawn a ghost who makes you stretch up to grab specific tiles, and the lychee acid baths that shrink you into goop, letting you get under low ceilings. None of which can be used at any time. It's all reliant on hitting world objects once they're activated, and thus, Jack himself doesn't really feel upgraded by the end. He just has more permission to do stuff. On the whole, the Pumpkin King is better as a platformer than as a Metroidvania, and even then, the platforming side is just solid. Jumping is fine, and you can latch onto the corners of platforms to get a leg up, although it's a bit awkward if it has a dangerous surface on top like these swinging spiked balls. Which, by the way, very Castlevania. Rarely are the levels all that dangerous, except for Oogie's Lair. It's a pretty breezy adventure, so the fact that getting around from place to place is only alright doesn't bother me that much. What does bother me are all these bugs, and they're bothering everybody else in Halloween Town too. Jack's main quest is to stop these insectoid minions from terrorizing everybody, first rescuing friends like Dr. Finkelstein, the werewolf, the clown, all the faces you remember. Not Sally though, you don't see her until the very end, and at least in this game's canon, Jack hasn't even met her yet. And that's another reason why this game feels far less exploration driven. You're constantly talking to characters and getting immediate goals and tasks one after another, kinda like how Metroid Fusion handles it. Not that I have a problem with that as far as general game design goes. I mean, you need to give some level of guidance even if this is more overt. But it waters down the Metroidvania flavor of the Pumpkin King, which is unfortunate. Back to the enemies, there is a sizable variety of bugs on the loose, from your standard big punchers, to projectile launchers, to tiny hoppers that explode, which I assume is all standard for the insect universe. And with all these bugs crawling around, you've got to take advantage of your admittedly not great arsenal of weapons. First you get the frog gun, which, despite its name, does not shoot frogs. You literally use a frog as a gun. Although even that's not accurate because it only affects an area in front of you, so in practice, it's more of a melee weapon. Not a bad one, and you can aim in multiple directions or crouch to reach smaller enemies, although you can't jump and aim upwards at the same time, which sucks when you've got aerial enemies about. And oddly, this thing doesn't work at point-blank range. I don't know, its hitbox seems to just float in front of Jack, which I guess encourages you to keep your distance, but like I said, the range on this froggy firearm ain't exactly generous. Later, you find the bat boomerangs that also have a misleading name because they do not return to you. No, instead, this is your projectile gadget, launching 3 bats that, after an upgrade, can home in on enemies but do reduced damage. Good for long range, but also somewhat unwieldy when platforming gets involved. Arkham Asylum this ain't. Then there's the Pumpkin Bomb, which actually does do exactly what its name suggests. As a weapon, it isn't that powerful, but it can destroy specific blocks because, you know, Metroidvania, so stockpiling them is helpful. Finally, you can also activate Pumpkin King form to burninate everything you see and fly across the screen. Cool for the bit of invulnerability you get, but its resources are extremely limited, so you're forced to conserve it. Although it doesn't even seem to do much against these bosses, so whatever. Also, for some reason, you refuel the Pumpkin King mode with chili peppers? Like, I get it, fire and spicy peppers, but I mean, this is a jack-o'-lantern. You don't exactly light those fires by throwing a habanero at a pumpkin. Maybe he should call himself the Picante King. There isn't much room for creative puzzle solving or even that much versatility when it comes to taking down foes. It really is just a point and fire kind of game. That's even true of the bosses, although these at least add platforming to the mix to keep you from just spamming attacks. For 90% of the journey, it's really not that challenging outside of 1 or 2 bosses that can be a bit tricky and the occasional enemy placed in an unfair spot. Which, by the way, also very Castlevania. Like these bugs that pop out of the fireplace that will get you if you're not expecting it, which you won't because you get no indication that they're hiding until they whack you. Maybe the bosses are more threatening, but with all the health upgrades you pick up, the vast majority aren't a big deal. I like that there are a bunch of huge insects, like a giant spider, centipede, moth, and a snake? Sure, if we stretch the definition of bug. Some of them can be annoying at first, but once you learn the patterns, they aren't bad at all. I do wish they had more oomph to them. It'd make this little dance that Jack does after killing a boss feel more earned. Although, fun fact, while fighting the Locust, I managed to defeat it right before dying, and Jack still did his silly little dance, only for me to be greeted with the game over screen right afterwards. I should probably just be glad that this didn't break the game or anything. It's got enough bugs as it is. But that's kind of the flow of the whole thing. Fight a bunch of bugs to get to a character who gives you your next quest, do the quest while fighting another bunch of bugs, and get an upgrade or item or something. It gets repetitive very quickly because you're revisiting older levels way too often, even if you're going down different corridors. So you see the same visuals and hear the same music, which compounds the problem. I complimented the backgrounds and sprite work earlier, and they are nice, but as far as actual levels, this game is kind of a swing and a miss. Speaking of swinging and missing, let's talk about that story. It's much harder to fit a unique narrative into a prequel setting because you have to do something that doesn't mess with continuity and fans' expectations for what built up to the original source material. And to be fair, I do like that this game not only avoids repeating Jack's journey of getting bored with the holiday, instead establishing a threat for him to deal with right away, but even that has its problems when you consider the series' lore. It kinda takes away from Jack's feelings that Halloween is the same every year in the film when, according to this game, Halloween wasn't the same the year prior because it was almost ruined by bugs. If this wasn't such an immediate predecessor to those events, it'd be fine, but it doesn't gel with what we know from the film. And yes, if you're familiar with the Battle for Pumpkin King graphic novel, it is also not the only origin story for Jack and Oogie, so hey, maybe we can just treat this as non-canon. That might explain its rather odd character writing too. Partly it's because the dialogue is more expository, but also it is just tonally bizarre. Sometimes it can't decide if it wants to go full-on comedy with setups that are really intricate for some reason. Like there's a section where you have to avoid this gas that reverses your controls and destroy its source. That's fair enough. It's also infected one of the vampires, and Jack says that they need to bring him back to insanity. Pretty clever subversion. But they hang it on the idea that because his mind is swapped the other way, he's become a vegetarian, and that feels like the major stakes rather than, you know, a mind-altering gas on the loose. Also, is this an anti-vegetarian joke because they say something's wrong with him in this state, or a pro-vegetarian joke because his new diet is, as they would put it, sanity? Oh, and if you're wondering what the mayor is up to, he's just trying to keep the town together as it goes into a panic, and then at one point he insists on making soup rather than doing anything helpful. Sure, this is the way to move the plot forward, but I am not giving the mayor any of that credit. Whatever, eventually you head into Oogie Boogie's lair to take the Sackhead down. The first phase is pretty boring since he's just running on a treadmill and not even directly attacking you. The only thing that makes it interesting is that you're on the same treadmill. But his second phase is really irritating if you run out of ammo quickly because he's got a shocking amount of health. Plus, in both of these phases, he has prolonged periods of invincibility, so for most of the fight, it's a waiting game, and I'm fine with bosses opening themselves up to vulnerability, but it just isn't very well done here. If you couldn't tell from my voice and my words, I really didn't care for the Pumpkin King. While it has solid visuals and the platforming is fine at first, it overstayed its welcome by the end. Which is crazy given that this is only a 6 to 8 hour adventure depending on how much optional stuff you go for, but with the recursive mission structure and constant back and forth, it felt like a far slower adventure. It has its moments, but overall, it's just kinda meh. So I guess if you're looking for a Nightmare Before Christmas game to play this holiday season, I'd recommend Oogie's Revenge, although it's a soft recommendation at best. That's the deal with playing obscure and forgotten games. You may occasionally find diamonds in the rough or games that deserve to be dead and buried, but most of the time you'll find stuff that's just okay. But what the heck, they went and did their best, and I guess that's all you can ask for. Alright, once more with feeling.
Oh no!
Hey, thanks for watching. Want to see me tackle more forgotten games? I did a video on the Wario game Master of Disguise that you might like. Or you can check out my Backlog Bingo series where I document my journey through my gaming backlog. Hope you have a fun and safe Halloween, and I'll see you all later.